How important is God to trust him?
Well, I think when people find God as sustenance rather than magician, then it feels healthier. I think our experience at Homeboy it's like a tiny drop of water on a very dry sponge. You kind of go, whoa, look what that just did. It just made the whole area that it hit and then a little bit beyond. We're going to be suppliers of hope because we know that addresses the despair clearly. The violence is just about despair.
I know you've been on plenty of interviews, plenty of other dialogues and speeches, and people say to you, what's the secret sauce? So you've had plenty of time to practice the answer. So in your mind, what's the secret sauce at Homeboy? One of our themes today, we're talking about Homeboy and why it works. I know you've been on plenty of interviews, plenty of other dialogues and speeches, and people say to you, what's the secret sauce? So you've had plenty of time to practice the answer. So in your mind, what's the secret sauce at Homeboy?
Well, I think that the net result of the secret sauce is a community where people feel safe, seen, and cherished. And so the secret sauce is getting people in that place where they can be lavished with attention and loving care. So part of the thing is you got to get them in that place. They have to walk in the door and they have to stay there long enough because it kind of catches, and they can feel that people are, just as people would say, I'm used to being watched, but I'm not used to being seen. And so then they have that palpable experience, and then it lures them. And then you're cultivating this thing, and everybody's doing it. Everybody's noticing them. Like a guy today said, I've been here for a month and waiting for a start date and all that. But it was like, there's no place like this. Right. And he's from New York. And he says, you have to start this in New York. Because I've been to a lot of places. I've never been to a place like this. Well, I know what he's talking about. He's talking about just the vibe, how people are. That's the secret sauce.
Yeah, for sure.
That's the thing that becomes contagious but you have to be, in the vicinity of it long enough for the bug to catch you.
Right. So I think it's exactly that people seem cherished. They are seen and they're cherished. And so what's remarkable to me is how many of our Homeboy community does that with each other. So how did that start? How did you get people to really believe in cherishing others?
I don't know if they believed in cherishing others. I think once you have a palpable experience of this having happened, where people were going, wow, I like how I feel when I come here. And then if you're on the receiving end of that, and then you're going to start to be the supplier and the giver of that. And because then you like how that feels too, knowing somebody's name from the day before and, and how's that baby? And were you able to sleep last night? And, whatever. And then they like how it feels. And then they like how it feels in delivering it to other people. So it's, I talk, about, receiving the tender glance and then becoming the tender glance. So that's kind of how it works. To recognize the notice of God, then you choose to be the notice of God. So they're noticing people. And they didn't ever have an experience of having done that in their life. And where does that come from? From having been noticed.
Yeah.
And then they go, wow, so I can do this too. Just as she has noticed me every time I come in, now I'm going to notice other people. Sure. And not because somebody says, here's how it works, or here's how you do it.
I was going to say that I've never heard you say to somebody, hey, go notice that person.
Yeah, that's right.
Go cherish that person.
No. And then it's a little bit like you watch it, you see it. And I mean, I was hearing today, I guess, or I was reading in a book, wherever I got it. But anyway, about Jesus was doing that. So it wasn't like, here's how you do this. But they watched him. They followed him. They said, oh, look what he's doing. Look how he's being moved with compassion at these people. And then that becomes contagious. That becomes what people want to do. And not because they're indicted if they don't, but they see it and they go, I think it is all about, my joy, yours, your joy complete. So It's about feeling, this is where the joy is. It's not just receiving it,
right?
But then it's also being a delivery system for it.
So that's where we are today, and people understand that, and it's a culture that embraces it, and it's whether through osmosis or watching others or feeling that they're seeing and cherishing others. Go back to the beginning. So what would have been the secret sauce, would you have said, in the first 10 years of Homeboy?
Well, it was smaller scale, but I think in the early days, because we had 8 gangs in my parish, there was a sense of I remember this when, I would get to know people's names, and now I'm not as good as I was, but I could do it pretty well in the early days, and I'd remember people's names, and I'd have my own little ways of remembering, big ears, that's Lefty. So that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And then
what how'd you remember my name?
Wonderful human being from New Jersey. And then I remember seeing this guy, and he just would walk away every time I walked in, a gang member. Mm-hmm. And then I'd ask a homie, hey, what's that guy's name? He always walks away. Well, that's Ernie. And so the next time I came, he was in the group, but miraculously, he didn't walk away this time. So, hi, Lefty. Hi, Joe. Hi, Ernie. How you doing? And he shook my hand, and he didn't say anything. I always learned, don't stay long, because it's fine. You touch in, you can be affectionate and loving and attentive, but leave. And I learned that early. So I just, okay, you guys be safe, okay? And then I walked away. And then I heard this kid, Ernie, say, in the most age-appropriate way, kind of breathless delight, the priest knows my name. And I could hear him as I walked away. Right. And I learned a lesson. I thought, that, since in those days, what did gang members mainly do? They wrote their names on walls. And it was a way of saying, here I am, notice me.
Right. So
then you notice them, and then you never forget their names. In the early days, people used to always say, oh my God, you really remember. And I really, it was part of my intentionality. And it comes from having taught. And a teacher told me, know every name by tomorrow. That was her only advice to me. And it was good advice.
Yeah.
It was really good advice, because once you knew their name, you had begun a relationship. And once you began a relationship, you never had to send anybody to detention.
Sure.
Because I don't want to foul this relationship up at the gate. It happened. And I learned that. I knew that. I never had I never had to send anybody to jug, as we called it in Jesuit schools. That carried through when I was at the parish. So that was a key thing. Now, you don't really say that. Now, hear this.
So the secret sauce was the personal relationships early on. So it's always
relational wholeness is where you're going.
Right.
And it really begins with, you don't want to say, hey, what's his name? You want to, and to this day, if you remember it, even as I was walking over here, I had met this kid, Sebastian, and that was earlier in the day. But when I was walking here, he was out in front. It had been 3 hours since we had actually met. It's no big deal, but I called him Sebastian as I was walking past. And again, it's just human, but especially with this population, it's like a current. It's like a electrifying.
Yeah, they're seen.
Yeah, and then he really literally, like, you shocked him.
Yeah, and telling that, you said you learned early on not to hang around in the group too long.
Yeah.
Did something happen? What was
I don't know what it was.
How was
because
it?
It's like, it was a little bit of, overstay your welcome.
Yeah.
Because you don't want to, I knew just humanly that this isn't about, it's relational, but it's not, hey, let me be your friend. Let me hang out here with you for hours. I knew that was not sensible or healthy. So, but it was enough. You touch in, you know their name, you come back, in those days, I'm not sure I had a card, which I do. I hand out all the time, but they knew I was at the church.
Sure. I mean, it's interesting as you say that. I think back over the years and the number of volunteers we've had come help us at Homeboy. And I think sometimes they make the mistake by trying to be the friend.
Yeah.
Which is different from saying you're in a relationship and having a positive impact on each other and dialoguing. But
in the people in the Kairos retreat movement, which is a retreat in prisons, they always say when a new person is come from the outside to do this 3-day retreat, and what do I say to them? And I remember this guy who ran them would say, listen, love, and that was it. And how sparse that is important,
right?
Because to keep it exactly that,
right?
Because then if somebody's trying too hard to become somebody's friend, like a volunteer, or even me in the early days, that just doesn't work. Humanly, it doesn't work. It's too fast. You're trying too hard.
But humanly, you do want to do more than just listen and listen and listen, right? So you have this sort of
you want to love, but you're listening. But that's so huge because we don't do it well. And when somebody does do it well, it's totally disarming. Right. And for this population, so unaccustomed to having people stop and listen to them. Oh my God.
Yeah.
As opposed to, let me give you a lot of advice
for sure
about how to do good and avoid evil. I always use that example when a woman came and said, I have to be a volunteer here. I said, why do you have to be a volunteer here? And she said, I believe I have a message that these young people need to hear. And I went, yikes.
Yep.
Inside, I said, yikes. And then I said, do me a favor, come back the minute you lost that message, because we don't want this message here. Yeah. We just want you to listen.
How did she respond?
She left in a huff, But I think that's why when people say, what am I going to do here? Well-meaning people who want to volunteer. And I always say, no. What's going to happen to you here? The minute you turn that around, and just the other day, somebody came in and wanted to volunteer. I said, it's not about doing, probably for a month. Come in, sit in the lobby, sit next to somebody. And
I remember that was advice you gave me when I first started volunteering.
Yeah.
Right. And it sounds
soft.
Yeah. It sounds wrong.
Yeah.
Well, things are going wrong, but it's pressing. It's the right type of advice.
But it's a little bit like somebody coming in charge, principal of a school. Yeah. People will say, don't do anything.
Yeah.
For a year.
Right.
Just literally don't make any big change. I think that's what it means mainly. But the principle is receive people. Allow your heart to be altered by people. Can you be reached by your faculty or your team or whoever the group is? And then they go, wow, we're on a relational track. And then when you say, here's what I think we need to do, and they go, okay. Because now you've established, even in terms of leadership, now you've established, I like this guy, right. And he listens to me. And now I'll go wherever he leads, basically.
Yeah. Let me ask you a question that I get asked a lot is, we say it this way, we give second chances, third chances, 8 chances, 10 chances. When did you really discover that you need to give people multiple chances?
I think, again, those things were relational in as much as someone would come and they would go. And the going would be a relapse, got popped, they're in prison or jail, and then they'd come back. So it wasn't, it's kind of backwards in the sense that...
But the rest of society would say, wag your finger and say,
we tried it once,
yeah, right.
and look what you did.
It was your fault why
that's right.
This all happened.
Yeah. Well, I remember Ruben at the Silkscreen. He was the one who, he's the one who coined the phrase, because somebody was talking to him, a customer, I think, and said, "Oh, I get what you do here. You give people second chances." And then he looked at the guy and he said, "Who gave them their first one?" And, it's a complex kind of notion because people presume that everybody has been given a first chance. And that's not true, So there's that piece. But it was also the fact that people came back.
Yeah.
And then, as I always say, how much we fretted in the early days that people wouldn't come back. But what proved the point of it was that everybody was. And part of the reason we don't fret anymore is because everybody comes back. Because it's so compelling to have had this experience of being seen and cherished, that once you're ready to receive it, even more deeply, then you come back. And so that just proves the theory that said, it doesn't matter, if it's the fifth time they came back. I mean, some of the people who run our organization now are folks who we had to say, come back when you're ready.
Right. Yeah, I got a couple of questions along those lines of come back when you're ready. So what does that criteria mean? When is someone not ready to be in our program?
Yeah, I think there's a kind of, people will indicate that they're not ready. So, like this morning in council, we had people, okay, so what's this mean that 3 days, no show, no call? Well, it indicates that they're not ready because no matter what, especially in this day and age, you can call, you can check in. It just means they're not able to do this right now. No harm. Come back when you're ready. There's no judgment to it. It's just, you've indicated, it's not like we have decided they're not ready. They have indicated that they're not ready. We'll go with you on this one, because you're telling us that you're not ready. That's fine. Come back when you are. It's not about us sitting on our high horses and saying, wait a minute, I don't think you're ready. As long as we can always maintain and tell them, this is a decision you're making. We wouldn't have made it because we know what this place is and we think you're great, but that's okay. Yeah. You have other data that we can't see. That's okay. No harm.
Right.
We'll be here.
And so what's our line? No slanging?
That was in the old days. No hanging, banging, or slanging.
You want to explain that?
So hanging was kicking it with the homies. Because if you're still kind of in that, you're not going to be able to fully accept what Homeboy has to offer. No hanging, banging, which is gang banging is the activity ranging from writing on the walls at the low end to shooting at people at the high end and anything in between. No hanging, banging, or slanging was selling drugs. So those three things can't coexist with existence at Homeboy Industries.
Right.
And so the hardest one is the hanging, because you always have homies who quibble. Well, I live there and I can't help it. And they're my friends. And, we used to play Little League together. I get it. That one's harder than selling drugs or gangbanging.
Right.
But hanging just says, you haven't hung up your gloves completely and you really have to.
One of my goals with this podcast is to really put on display for people the wisdom of our leadership team. And so Hector Verdugo was on this one of the episodes, and he was talking about when he first started and kind of what drew him to Homeboy. What memories do you have of Hector when he first started?
Well, I remember he came in those days, of course, I can't remember which office we were in, but, we had pretty solidly been a place that helped the members of the 8 gangs in the projects. And so I think I vaguely remember him from juvenile hall or something. And there were some kind of context in the projects in which he lived, which were not, the projects of my parish. And I think there was even a kind of, I can't remember if I remember this happening or I remember him telling me, but it was one of those, yeah, you only help homies from those projects, you know. I think he said that at juvenile hall.
Yeah.
And I may have remembered that when I saw him come in, but somehow I knew him vaguely as somebody from the other projects and another gang than the ones I was used to working. So right away I said, I got to get this guy to work here. I think he just wanted, there was something, as I recall, like a computer. I just need a computer. Any way I can get a computer. I go, well, we got computers here, stay here, that kind of thing.
Sure.
And in short order, it was, you know, work here. And right away, you can just tell with Hector, this is a leader.
Yep.
And he was I knew that he was exactly who we needed there at that time. So we were probably, that must have been around 2000. So yeah, so that was our what I would call our third headquarters. And so, but we had just gotten in there because I remember the space of it. I remember what we called the well, and I remember seeing him, and then he was in the well, and in short order, I made him leader.
Key part of what you said there, and what you've taught all of us, is that as someone's walking through the door for the first time, you help them in some way, right? Just Hector wanted a computer, Hector wanted a job, and so what is the in the business world you would call that a lost leader?
Yeah.
How do you get people in and but then what do you think makes it stick? What made it stick for Hector? Why did he hang in there with us?
I think if someone pays attention to you, it's the most compelling thing in the world.
Yeah.
And then I think our experience at Homeboy it's like a like tiny drop of water on a very dry sponge. You kind of go, whoa, look what that just did.
Yep.
It just made the whole area that it hit and then a little bit beyond, it transformed it. Mm-hmm. But that's kind of what it is, because we would look at it and say, boy, that's a tiny drop of water.
Yeah.
Yeah, but, like there was a homie who at the Art Academy, and, so he had given me something that his mom had made. And so I texted him back. I said, wow, that was delicious. Tell your mom that was wonderful. And I said something like, I'm proud of you. I'm proud of, the man you've chosen to become, some kind of thing. Oh my God. He wrote me back this thing like never in my life, and we would think of it as not a huge thing. But this was really a very large drop of water on a very dry sponge. And I'm always startled, even after almost 40 years, where I go, wow, that was tiny.
Yep.
And wow.
And easy to do.
Easy to do.
Loving.
And impactful.
Yeah.
Like you're surprised, even to this day, you get surprised at how that can be transformational.
Yeah. Jose is another one of our leaders. Now, I remember Jose came during my time, so I remember him coming in. So what are your memories of Jose?
You mean of his starts and stops? You remember that? Yeah. It's funny. It's hard to distinguish between what do I remember, and I've heard him tell his story in so many venues over the years where he's come with me and he's given talks. Yeah. So I can't remember if I authentically remember it as a firsthand memory, but I've heard him talk about how
he
how
came
distrustful.
You can see his skills, his massive talent. Like I'm speaking to you as a business guy, massive talent, engaging with people, articulate. But then you saw the struggles, right? He struggles with his addiction.
Yeah.
And he just...
Which I barely remember. I remember when he was living in another place, and I remember going over there but, I don't remember so much all the starts and stops of it, just the fact of it.
Yeah.
And then people who are more attuned to, oh yeah, he's getting high, or whatever it was that led him to say, or have people at Homeboy say, oh, no, you got to go to rehab again,
right.
having done it.
Right. And for me, that was what the lesson was. And we get taught this often, like you want something for someone more than they want for themselves.
That's right.
So what we saw in Jose, he's like, oh my gosh, but he kept falling backwards.
And people say that here all the time. They go, we can't want this more than you.
Right.
And which is a kind of a truism now, especially with drug addiction.
Which leads to, so I bring that story of Jose up, and he does talk about it with others, is that people don't go through the 18-month program from beginning to end straight on, right? It takes multiple times for something clicks along the way where they won't go backwards. They're resilient and they move forward.
Yeah.
That healing happens.
It's kind of the reverse of drinking, where they say, you've been drinking heavily for 20 years and then you get clean. Then you're in recovery for 5 years. And then you have a relapse. And what they say, I've never thought of this before, but it's kind of like the reverse. But they say that your body picks up exactly where you left off.
Oh, really?
In terms of, it wasn't like, now it's like, the first day you ever drank. No, your body kind of is exactly where you left it when you entered recovery. So I think it's the same thing a little bit like, if they were with us for 6 months, and then they, go to jail or they leave us, when they come back, they don't really start all over again. That's what my point is. That your body has a memory of, I remember, which is why they come back. I remember being noticed here. I remember loving attention here. And so you don't have to, it's not like day one. Right. It really is day 249.
Which you can build upon.
Yeah, so you do have something to build upon. I had never thought of that before because there's a sense where we say, start over. Or am I going to start the whole 18 months over? You left at 3-month mark, and so now we're going to start you at the 3-month mark. No, it's something has already begun in you.
Yeah, started.
And it didn't get erased by your going to jail. That now, the modicum of resilience and sturdiness that you acquired by being in a place that noticed you, we just, we pick up where we left off in a sense, which is kind of liberating because people don't want to repeat themselves. And it's like, no worry, you won't be repeating yourself. You're building on what had happened, before.
A lot of what you're saying is about people, and we work with people. And so I've heard you say we work with gang members, not gangs. So can you explain what that means and why you got there?
Yeah, but we work with gang members and not gangs really was a reaction to the fact that in my early days, I was working with gangs, peace treaties, truces, ceasefires, all that kind of stuff. And there are elements in the city that kind of do that still. And I always say, if I thought it was sensible, Homeboy would be doing it still. And I don't think it is sensible because I really do think it serves the cohesion of the gang, and that can't be good. And it cosigns on something, and that can't be good. And it supplies oxygen to gangs, and that can't be good. So that's why it was stepping away from something I had done for 10 years probably, which was, let's have a ceasefire between this gang and that gang.
And what led you to understand that was not productive?
Part of the city was kind of embracing that, and then then I thought, well, this is not what gangs are about. It's not Northern Ireland, and it's not the Middle East, and there aren't sides, because then you're co-signing on the fact that they have enemies. And then, so I think the unsophisticated take and the superficial take says, oh, they're fighting. They got to be fighting about something. Well, let's sit them down and work it out. But I knew that the violence was about a lethal absence of hope. So, okay, you go ahead and work with gangs if you want,
right? But
we're not going to do that because we know it's about infusing hope to kids for whom hope is foreign. So we're going to be suppliers of hope because we know that that addresses the despair clearly. And the violence is just about despair. It's not about, don't you see that you're killing each other, trying to slap them across the face? No, that the city did that, and people in the city did that. And then, people, found their gut livings by being, interrupters or, step aside, let us handle this.
Sure.
Gang members will listen to us. And it created an enterprise of some kind out in the world,
Yeah.
And then I thought, no, this doesn't understand. It's funny. I'm not a gang member. I'm a white guy, but they don't understand what this is about. They think it's about something. They think it's about conflict. And there's violence in gang violence, but there isn't conflict.
So then moving that into what I've learned from you is how the team manages the floor in terms of not having too many folks from one particular gang, not allowing that group of folks from the same gang hang out together. So can you talk more about that?
Yeah, that's a difficult one because there's something natural about it and good, in as much as you would say, you hire this guy from that gang. And what does he do immediately? He says, hey, this is amazing. And who does he tell? He doesn't tell his enemies. He tells his friends, and they come in and you don't want to put the kibosh on that immediately anyway, right. But you're always counting. You're going, okay, there's a critical mass here and we can't afford to have 8 guys, because then it changes the dynamic, because then people are posturing and they're performing for each other. And you can manage it somewhat, because you don't want to say this guy comes in who wants exactly
he needs help. Yeah.
He wants what you want him to want, Right. And so you don't want to throw cold water on it, but there are ways to do it. You do a dance, you spread it out. I'm going to start you next month, or I'm going to send you over there. Part of the management, as you mentioned, is being mindful of that. You go, whoa, those 4 guys are standing together. No, I can't have that. But you don't go and say, you can't be standing together. You go and say, hey, Lefty, come here. Can you help him do that thing? And all of a sudden you have 3 and not 4.
Right.
And then you kind of do more of that. And you break it up. You break it up without them knowing that that's exactly what you're doing.
And the team does an excellent job at seeing all that. And even while I'm there 12, 13 years, the team sees far more about those interactions than I see along the way.
But part of the issue too is, we don't recruit. And so we're not going out to anybody's street corner. And we're not saying, gosh, we got 5 guys from this gang. We need to get 4 guys from that gang. No, whoever comes in the door, you deal with whoever comes through the door. In our heads or with each other, we might say, God, we got too many guys from this gang. But you're not going to say that to somebody who comes in and say, no, we can't take you in. We have too many guys from that gang. It's happened. Yeah. Embarrassingly, right. That's happened. But you want to be able to you be mindful of it. Mix, race, gender, because it's sometimes not just gang. It's members from that gang. It's also friendly gangs. They don't have any trouble being with this gang.
Right.
So, but again, because we have no control over who walks through the door, there's a delicate dance that we do in trying to, spread it out so that people aren't, in the early days, really bad, because the church was in a gang neighborhood, period. One gang. So, and there were all sorts of gangs that couldn't come to the church, not because of the church. Once they got to the church, they were fine. But trying to get there, you're crossing enemy territory. So then I remember I created I think it was a gardening thing, just members from one gang. I mean, I was so naive.
Yeah.
And that was their social enterprise. So try to imagine one of our 14 and you say, your whole gang gets that business.
There's only one territory they can do business in.
Yeah. But there's that, but it's also, you're really serving the cohesion of that gang.
Yeah, for sure.
Big mistake. Yeah. So I never did that again. Yeah. And nor would I have built ever in a million years the bakery on the site where the bakery burned down in October of 99, because, obviously I wanted to get out of there.
Right. I think what's also, it seems amazing, as we talk about, we have folks from all over the county, all different gangs, and they're, in our trainees, we call them trainees, they come in to heal, and they really want to leave gang life behind. But oftentimes there's still violence out in the streets, there's gang violence. And so our team's really good at knowing that, okay, gang X and gang Y just had a lot of gang violence among themselves. And then we have eyes on those folks who are at Homeboy and how that's impacted there, because they're being asked by their folks, by their gang members, their homies who aren't at Homeboy, to sort of carry on their reputation, right? And our team does a good job of diffusing that and recognizing that we're all in relationship.
How can you work alongside him when we're beefing it right now, or there's been an incident which kind of, puts gasoline on the flames?
Right. Every morning we have morning meeting, and at that morning meeting, there's a lot of great things happen there. But thought of the day is an affirmation. And
do we say? I never know. Is it thought of the day or for the day?
For the day. Oh.
What do you say?
I always say of the day. Have I had that wrong all these years?
Thought for the day, thought of the day. I say for, but I think people say of. But I don't know. I could be wrong.
We'll have to go look that up.
Yeah.
Check one of your books. Both. So Deborah gave a thought of the day several weeks ago. And in her thought of the day, it was titled "Trust Freedom." And she did a long stint in prison, right? And she's been out about 9 months to a year. And she's talking about trusting and freedom, and that, in essence, it was like she's recognizing that as people leave the prison system, they're afraid of freedom, or while they want it, it's like it's scary. What are your thoughts about this concept of freedom, and all someone comes out and has all this newfound opportunity in front of them, and how they react?
I think kind of the important word is trust, because for all the ways that we measure people's health and healing is their ability to trust. So there's a kind of a notion that says if you have a hairy eyeball in terms of being distrustful of everything, institutions, government, the hospital, that makes you savvy. But I think what it makes you, or indicates rather, is that there's healing that needs to be done. So healthy people are trusting people.
Most of our folks there's a reason why they don't trust all those institutions, right?
No, I wouldn't agree with that, actually.
That they haven't been disappointed by those institutions?
Yeah, I mean, there's everybody has, but a healthy person is able to kind of basically say, I didn't go to medical school, and this doctor has. And so it's kind of like the birth of conspiracy theories. You buy them because you don't trust.
Yeah.
And healthy people trust. And people who are not quite yet healthy or whole distrust. And that's part of what happens when folks come out of prison too, is that they don't know what to trust, or can they trust? And so I don't know so much if it's about freedom. It's about the healthier you become, the more trusting you are. It doesn't mean naive. Wow, you can really sell anything to this person because would buy anything. No, it's really has to do with health, and because I think that's part of the dilemma. And like with cops, for example, where you say, they've had a bad experience with law enforcement, so they don't trust police officers. And some of that is born from their experience. And some of that is born from their need for healing. The hospital is a cleaner one for me because you see it all the time, and especially since COVID, which has exacerbated a lot of the people's inability to kind of trust.
Yep.
So endless are the stories of people coming out of hospitals and saying, my 95-year-old grandfather just died. I think we're going to sue the hospital. I go, he was 95.
Right.
We think they killed him or it was negligence. You go, I know exactly what that is. That's born of people not quite excavating their wounds.
Yeah. Well, I think she got there too, because in her thought of the day, she says, life is hard, but with God, I have this. How important is God to trusting?
I think when people find God as sustenance rather than magician, then it feels healthier because it's a setup, because homies will always text me after I got the job, God is good, and I go, well, who's going around saying God is bad? Let me know. It's a setup. Homies do this all the time when they have accident in a car and they show me the picture and it's a totaled car. I was in this car with my 2 kids, not a scratch on any of us. God is good. And I go, yeah, in my head. I think, but if one of your kids had been killed, now what are you forced to say? That's why I think I'm of the school that says God protects me from nothing, but sustains me in everything. So once you can kind of tune into, that God is the sustenance, which is to say, I can get through anything because I'm being sustained, as opposed to says, God has me on this one, which is going to say the outcomes are all going to be favorable because God has me. And I go, oh gosh, life is random and shit happens. So
obviously well said. But how do you think that plays out at Homeboy? Because a lot of people find sustenance in God, but we never say those words to them.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, I think you do. I mean, part of the thing is, as long as it's sustenance and not, please give me an A on my math test, even though I didn't study, that kind of thing. You want people to move, as Richard Rohr would say, from the 10 Commandments to the 8 Beatitudes, move from that place that's a little bit young, that says God will rescue me. Because when God doesn't, then you're pissed, because you've set yourself up for that dilemma. So my thing would be, no matter what happens, if you're aligned with the energies of God that sustains you, then it doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter how things turn out.
Yeah. So let me ask you this question. So I've seen from a distance how homies come into your office and seek blessings and seek forgiveness. And I imagine they have said to you, well, I thought God was with me and X, Y, and Z happened. What do you say to them?
Lately, I've been using this example a lot because it's clarifying for me. A homie who just was sobbing because suddenly he felt the entire weight of his life and all the wound and brokenness and abandonment and abuse. It just rushed in on him and he's sobbing. I mean, really sobbing. And then he looked at me and he says, has God disowned me? And he sobs all the more. And then he quickly says, have you? And I realized in that moment that the only way he'll know that this is not on God's mind is to know that it's not on mine either. And that was kind of key for me because that's how it's supposed to work. Not, let me tell you some things about God, but let me show you how disowning is not part of my vocabulary either, because he'll only know it about God if he's seeing it in other people. So I think that's kind of the key thing.
Same thing about shame, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, we don't do shame at Homeboy.
Yeah. Well, occasionally we do. It's because sometimes that's a tricky one. Shame is tricky because you don't want to rub folks' nose and stuff, but but you also want people to be clear about stuff. So, I catch myself on that every once in a while. A kind of okay, no, let's go back and let's make sure we understand this first.
Right.
Because that's important. It's not having people feel shame or even shaming them. But you also you don't want delusion. You want to be able to say, okay, this happened because you never called in. And we have a policy, and it's a good policy. We just presumed you abandoned this job. That happened today.
Well, it's holding a mirror up to what their actions are.
Yeah. But it's not.
So we're not wagging our finger at
Yeah, no. It's not shame, but it's clear. Because I always think clear is loving. Mm-hmm. If you can be clear with people, you're really deeply loving,
All right. I think we got enough for now.